In 1963, when Barack Obama was just 2 years old, his father left his family and Hawaii to study economics at Harvard. The distance strained the marriage, and soon he and Anne divorced. At 22 years old, Anne had become a single parent. As a student at the University of Hawaii, she collected food stamps to make ends meet. Still, she saw a bright future.
I think because she was an only child, she was a voracious reader and ended up having this amazing imagination and always, I think, was looking to the larger world beyond where she was living. And by the time she was an adult, she was somebody who was fascinated with different kinds of people and different cultures.
One of those people, Lolo Sutoro, an Indonesian student at the University of Hawaii. Anne, attracted to his easy nature and the playfulness he showed to her son Barry, began dating Lolo. Parents' approval, Anne married Lolo, and soon they moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, with 6-year-old Barry.
Jakarta was like a big sprawling village at that time. It wasn't as developed as it is now, and the driveways of homes were still lit with kerosene lamps, and there were a lot of open-air markets and street food sellers.
His stepfather, Lolo, was a geologist. Anne, concerned with the poverty that surrounded her, worked with the nonprofit group. In 1970, they had their first child, a daughter, Maya.
Tell me about your mother, Anne.
Here was this woman who put on her Birkenstocks, and she would get on the back of a motorcycle and she would go and fight in patriarchal societies to get resources for women and children.
Somebody who's intellectual.
Georgia Macaulay was Anne's close friend in Jakarta.
She was joyful. I can hear her laughter, to this strong, hearty laugh. She was just interesting, fun, outgoing, vibrant, brilliant.
Anne's home was always a flutter of activity.
You never know if a famous Indonesian movie producer was going to come, an artist was going to come. It was kind of like being at the UN.
For Barry, every day brought something new.
He was confronted with poverty, but also great beauty and cultural complexity. And I think that he learned in Indonesia that there was always more than meets the eye.
Indonesia's large Muslim population has prompted questions about what kind of school Obama attended. For 2 years, beginning in kindergarten, he went to this Catholic school, later a public school. While it had mostly Muslim students, it was open to all faiths, and we can confirm it was not a Muslim religious school or madrasa.
I was going to an Indonesian-speaking school. We couldn't afford to send me to a fancy international school.
But his mother also kept him on his toes at home.
She made sure that I was getting my English lessons, and she would wake me up at 4:30 in the morning and drill into me, the lessons. And I would be sleeping and nodding off, and she would say, listen, this is no bargain for me either, Buster, because she was having to wake up and then go to work later.
After 4 years in Jakarta, Anne worried that her son, now in 4th grade, was not getting the best education. In 1971, she made a painful decision to send him back to Hawaii to live with her parents, where he was accepted into an exclusive private school on a scholarship.
It was very painful. She's a very sensitive person, and he was the center of her life for many years.
For the first time in his life, Barry was without his only real parent, his mother.
One of the things that I always knew was that I was the center of her world. And, I've always believed that if kids know they're loved, if they know that in their parents' eyes they are special, that can make up for a lot of instability and a lot of change. And that's what she was always able to transmit to me.
But that same year, Barry's father, Barack Sr., came back into his life. They had not seen each other in 8 years.
Was there anything in your 10-year-old mind that you thought, maybe I can do to keep him to stay?
If you've got this person who suddenly shows up and says, I'm your father, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you don't have any sense of who this person is, and you don't necessarily have a deep bond of trust with them. I don't think your reaction is, how do I get him to stay? I think the reaction may be, what's this guy doing here? And who does he think he is? It was only during the course of that month, by the end of that month, that I think I started to open myself up to understanding who he was. But then he was gone, and I never saw him again.
This school, the Punahou School in Honolulu, was one of the few constants in Barry's life. His friends became his second family.
Oh, definitely, it was like a family. We were all close.
Alan Lum and Barry played basketball together.
He was a cool dresser, very hip, bell bottoms with flip-flops, walking around, talking to everybody, maybe even being a politician in his own way.
While popular, Barry wasn't at the top of his class.
He was a cool kid. He was a balanced kid. He wasn't particularly ambitious. He didn't get straight A's. He wasn't part of student government, but he was affable and easygoing, and he liked to play basketball.
Basketball became the center of his life, earning him the nickname Barry Obama.
I can remember him practicing and playing on the outdoor courts, and school getting over, and he'd be the first guy out there, and we would all meet out there. He just loved basketball.
I love this picture.
But Kelly Furushima, another friend, saw a different quality.
He had written a piece for one of our literary magazines in high school that showed a sense of social consciousness. Everyone else was writing about, butterflies and music. And, the last line of his poem was something like walking a straight line in a crooked world. So he was pretty deep for a kid.
On the surface, Barry Obama seemed happy. But as a mixed-race child raised by white grandparents in a largely white school, he struggled with his own identity. Coming up, Barack Obama, fatherless, unfocused, and adrift.
There was a lot of turbulence there, and I experimented with drugs, didn't apply myself in school.